When I was first interested in learning more about complexity, I decided I was going to take a sabbatical, and so I applied to the Plexus Institute. Kurt Lindbergh is the CEO there, and said, "Kurt, could I come and study with you for a while?" And I was planning a year out, and he says, "Oh, don't bother to plan a year out, start now." And so he invited me to join the Nursing Learning Network, which was funded by a grant from the Robert Wood Johnson program to help nurses learn more about complexity applications to nursing. And so there are several nurses around the country, I forget how big it is now, about 50 maybe, on the Nursing Learning Network. They're using complexity-inspired principles in Kansas and in Minnesota and New Jersey and your place. And so we periodically have calls where we just get together and someone presents a topic, and then people ask questions about how it relates to complexity. And there's actually a place in Texas too, Center for Nursing and Nonlinear Dynamics, which takes a very mathematical approach to complexity and a lot of mathematical applications. And I think the VA actually in Washington DC is looking at complexity simulations of pandemic flu kind of transmissions. But the Plexus Institute is an organization that is devoted to the application of complexity principles to issues of health and community. And so Kurt asked me to become a trustee on that group, and so I am. And one of the projects they've recently been involved with is the MRSA project, methicillin-resistant staph aureus, I think. It's a hospital-acquired infection that kills thousands, hundreds of thousands of people every year because it is just so resistant to any treatment. And so one of the things that people probably need to know is that there are some methods, research methods, that people use to tap into the relationship building that goes around with a complexity-inspired intervention. One of those is appreciative inquiry, talking about what's right versus what's wrong and how you want to make something happen. Another one is about positive deviance. And so the Plexus Institute has been using positive deviance as a model to bring staff and physicians, doctors, nurses, sanitation workers together in hospitals and talk about how specifically to prevent MRSA infections in the hospital and what can they do to decrease the incidence of MRSA. And so by opening that frame up and asking everyone to participate, what happens then is you start the percolation of ideas and relationship building, and ideas emerge and morph into something new that turn into practices. So positive deviance is a model that was developed about 20 years ago by a woman who noticed that there were some children in Vietnam who were starving and some not. And so she went to the places where children weren't starving and started asking questions about what is it that they were doing to feed their children. And lo and behold, these people were using different grasses and different flowers that other people would never consider eating, but they positively, deviantly, use those as food to sustain and nourish the children. And so the notion behind positive deviance is that in some places there are good practices going on, and so if you can find out what those are and replicate them in another context, you might achieve some good results. And so there are some beta sites going on with the MRSA project, and there have been dramatic, I mean dramatic, decreases in the transmission and incidence of MRSA infections in regards to the application of a kind of positive deviant, complexity-inspired approach where you build on relationships between and among people, and that you help them self-organize and help them be embedded in their system and help them emerge new and different solutions to things.